So I'm in the bag now, and it's pretty dusty in here, and over there. I mean, you can't see where I'm pointing, but is a tent I just got out of the bag, and the tent belongs to a performance artist called Kate Stobbart. She's an artist based in Newcastle, and I got to know about her work while I was down there in residency back in September. And I don't know, I arrived, and I mean, the place I was doing the residency is kind of predominantly like sculptural practice, lots of people producing massive objects. And as soon as I arrived and I said I was a performance artist as well, they were like, oh hey, you know what, like, you probably get on really well with Kate, because she's a performance artist too. And as if we have some kind of shared bonding over happenings or Alka Pro or something. But so anyway, they told me where her studio was, and it's up on the top floor of the building. There's like 5 floors, and and it's it's up at the top of the building. And so I started going up every couple of days to see if she was there, just to drop in. I didn't know how to get in contact with her otherwise. And every time I went up, it was like, I mean, she has a really, really nice studio space, and there's like windows on either side, and the sun would come in like really, really beautifully, like every, I don't know, I must have gone up like at the same time every day or something, like potentially sunset or sunrise or something, but everything was like lit so dramatically, so theatrically. And it was, God, it was really, really glorious actually. Every time I went up, she wasn't there. But I started going up and going there to just think, really. So I'd sit there, and sitting with me in the studio space was this massive tent, this huge, oh man, it must have been about 5 meters, 4 meters, kind of on the base, and I mean it brushed like the ceiling, so it must have been like 2.5 meters tall or something like this. And I kind of just looked at it because it was massive. I mean, it must have fitted like 10, 12 people, like, and it was kind of a bit absurd in this studio space that was so filled with other weird kind of sculptural things. So I'd sit there, And because the studio was open plan, there'd be people walking past, and obviously, like, I was an outsider there. So first question would be, who are you? How'd you get in here? And then the second question was always about the tent and what I thought about the tent. And I mean, I got really fascinated with it, actually. And I started asking people what they were thinking about stuff and what they knew about the tent. And so one person said that it being pitched so some prints could get protected from outside dust. And then another person said the studio was really exposed, so it had been pitched so there would be like a warmer space to, like kind of inhabit during the winter months. And then another person said that Kate, the artist, had gone to a music festival and it got really wet and muddy and had been just pitched to dry it out. And I mean, all of these things contradicted one another, but the one thing everyone agreed on was that it had been pitched 3 years ago and no one had seen Kate Stobbart since. And I thought to myself, God, the plot really thickens, doesn't it? So I went down. I went downstairs because I believed them. I mean, there was a huge amount of dust that had gathered on top of this tent, like loads and loads of like excess skin waste and stuff. And so I went down to the director, to the studio manager, and asked, and she confirmed. It was true, no one had seen Kate in a very long time. She definitely hadn't been in the studios anyway. And I mean, it started to wonder. I mean, I mentioned before that the studio is kind of predominantly sculpture based, and that I think the reason for that is they have this kind of policy where they don't discriminate against people for making larger sculptures. So every studio space is the same price. It's like flat rate. And it doesn't matter what kind of size of space you have, even if you've got like a tiny one or a massive one, you pay $16.25 a week. So that works out as £65 a month. And I mean, I was really interested in finding out like how much Kate had spent on maintaining this tent being pitched for 3 years. And it was, 65 a month is $845 a year. And £2,535 for the 3 years it'd been pitched. So I mean, it's a lot of money. And I was just trying to figure out like what was the kind of the labour economy or the exchange that was happening between this object and the performance artist, and whether there was something there, what was worth spending £2,535 on. So I started to think it was maybe it's a placeholder. Maybe it's like it's a promise to come back to the studio, and maybe that's what it costs, £16.25 a week to validate yourself as an artist, to say you still have a practice. Sorry, I've got some dust in my mouth. I mean, maybe it's not just a placeholder, but maybe it's a stakeholder. And yeah, I really loved the relationship between stakes and tents and having to pitch your tent with some stakes. But like, maybe it was an investment into the success of the organization, and like a stake in it, and like having a stake. What is at stake here? I mean, a lot of these kind of artist-run studio spaces are very precarious, and I mean it's a nice thing to believe in something so much, to pay that amount of money. And then, I mean, the other thing is maybe it's a kind of occupancy. Maybe it's a way of occupying space physically when you're not there. And I spoke with a lot of people about the tent. And, a lot of people weren't happy really with it being there. I mean, as I said before, the studio space that Kate had is beautiful, like glorious, and for her to kind of use it in this way, where it can't be used by the kind of productivity that a studio expects of its artists, potentially, that's the reason why people weren't happy. But the way in which this tent was some kind of like antisocial blockage, antisocial blockade. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really interesting, and of course, like all of these kind of antisocial blockages and stuff. I mean, the Newbridge project being one within the kind of steady stream of flow in Newcastle city centre. Yeah, they all get eventually removed by people in power. They get seen. They grow and they accumulate, and then of course, like the dust accumulates on a tent, and then they're seen, and then because they can be surveyed by those around, and then they get removed. So I finished the residency without speaking to Kate because I was so obsessed with this myth I created, and then about a month after I left the residency, I got this phone call actually from the studio manager, and she was saying that they were all being evicted. And Newbridge Project it's a big studio complex, and actually they always knew at some point they would be evicted. There's 80 studio holders there, and as I said, they make huge works, and there's no functioning lift, and it's always going to be a bit of bollock, getting those things out. So first, I guess I was worried about my friends, but secondly, I was worried about what was going to happen to Kate's tent, the object that I'd spent so much of my time thinking about. So I got Kate's email, and I emailed her, and I wanted to meet her and hear about her practice and hear about what she thought about this weird fantasy I'd made about this tent. Whether she thought it was an artwork even, I don't know. And we met, and we came up with a set of conditions, or like a contract for hiring the tent. And now I have custody of the tent until she needs it again. And so that's the tent. You still can't see where I'm pointing, but it's still over there. It's very dusty in here, so I'm just gonna get out.